Give Bees a Chance. Words and Pictures by Bethany Barton. There are lots and lots of different types of bees. Squash bee, mining bee, southeastern blueberry bee, sweat bee. Those are some of my favorites. I'll try and show you some pictures later. Wool carder bee, cellophane bee. This is the bumblebee, the big fat boys you see flying around all over the place. And of course, the European honeybee. Give bees a chance. This is my best buddy Edgar. We all love the same things, like board games, dinosaurs, strawberries, and honey. And of course, bees. Except that I don't really like bees. Sure you do. Didn't I tell you there are about 25,000 different kinds of bees to love? Maybe. Then I told you all about the 3 types of honeybees. Queens, there's just 1 per hive. Drones, 300 to 500 per hive. Okay, drones are large males with no stinger. Okay, and they just kind of help to manage the queen. Oh, by the way, queens make all of the baby bees. They make all of the other bees. And there are workers. There's 30,000 to 80,000 workers. These are small females with stingers. Okay, their job is to do everything else. They gather pollen, they make honey, they build the hive, they protect the nest. Ah, get them away from me! Okay, blow gently on bees to make them scatter. Whew, thanks. Like I was saying, I don't like bees. But why? Mostly because of their stingers and attached venom sacs, which are the cause of painful bee stings. That part you told me last week. Last Sunday, Edgar, brave tears, the ouch, super mean bee with a stinger. But that was just one bee. Couldn't you still give bees a chance? Maybe I just need to remind you how weird and cool a honeybee's anatomy is. Honeybees have 5 eyes. Okay, they have got the big 2 large eyes we normally think of, and then on top of their head are 3 tiny one-celled eyes or one lens eyes called ocelli. The ocelli are used to help them to navigate. Okay, the big eyes have lots of hexagon-shaped cells that let bees see in really cool ways. Bees have 2 stomachs. They've got a honey stomach, also known as a crop, for turning nectar into honey, and they have a bee stomach. That's where they digest the nectar for their own energy. Bees have 4 wings. They lock together for flying, and then they come apart so they can fold them together to store them later. And then, of course, like all insects, bees have 6 legs. Okay, and even on their legs, they have like a quote-unquote pollen basket that they can use to carry their pollen with their hind legs. And of course, some bees, but not all bees, have a stinger. Ouch. Maybe you just need some time to get to know them. How about millions of years? Do you know bees lived with dinosaurs? Scientists have found bee fossils from millions of years ago. Even ancient Egyptians kept bees. Here's the hieroglyphic symbol for bees. In fact, we found honey from bees was found in Egyptian tombs, thousands of years old, and it was still edible. Ooh, honey. Perfect. Maybe you just need some honey. Bees make honey. Why are you telling me all this stuff? So you'll give bees a chance. Once you learn how great they are, you're bound to fall in love with them. Check out how honey is made. A bee gathers nectar from flowers. Nectar goes into the special bee stomach called the crop. The contents of the crop are then they processed a little bit, and then they are spit up, and another bee eats it. The new bee breaks down the sugars of the nectar within her own crop. Okay, this processed nectar is passed along to several more bees. So they each take a turn processing that nectar a little bit more in order to turn it into towards honey. With each breakdown, the nectar in the crop until each bee so it's passed down to several more bees who each break down the nectar in the crops until it becomes honey. Then the honey gets barfed into the honeycomb cell. Right? There's the honeycomb cells in the background. And fanned by the wings of the bees so that the water evaporates, the moisture evaporates. Lastly, it's sealed with beeswax to keep it safe. It's put in its own little container. Did you say barf? Just 1 pound of honey takes 2 million flowers and thousands of bees to create. Ah, too many bees. Blow gently on bees to make them scatter. It looks like I haven't convinced you just yet. No, because they're all gonna sting me. Oh well, bees do sting, sometimes, but not because they're mean. Here's some stinger stories. Bees only sting to defend themselves, okay? And to avoid getting squished or smashed. In fact, many bees lose their stingers after attacking, which is sort of like your hands disappearing if you pinch your sister. Also, what are you wearing? Bee armor? That's not going to work. It was designed for dragons. I think it can handle bees. Well, there is a kind of armor that beekeepers wear, but it looks quite a bit different. It allows them to collect honey and beeswax without getting stung by startled bees. Okay, here are some of the details. White color helps to put bees at ease. It doesn't surprise them. Okay, the veil, okay, around the head protects the face and the neck. Hive boxes with removable frames, so you don't have to like destroy their home. You can open it up, pull out the bee frame. Okay, and then you pull out the bee frame, and that's where you get your honeycomb and your honey. You know, I love honey, but I'd be willing to give it up forever to never see a bee again. But giving up bees means giving up so much more than just honey. Some scientists say bees are responsible for a third of all the fruits and vegetables that we eat. Bees have a big impact on the food chain. You see, in order for plants to grow, fruits and vegetables, they need the right ingredients. Sun, water. Okay, a major ingredient they need is pollen. But since flowers can't move, they can't always get pollen from each other. I want to make a strawberry. Throw me some pollen. I don't have arms. That's where bees fly in. A bee's fuzzy body catches pollen from flowers. Pollen falls in the next flower the bee visits. They act as a pollen delivery service, helping give flowers the ingredients they need. A single bee can visit over 1,000 flowers a day, making bee pollination powers unparalleled, which means without bees, there'd be a lot less yummy stuff to eat. And bees are disappearing in large numbers. Bees actually need our help. Okay, I take it back. I don't want bees gone. I even sort of want to help them, as long as they don't sting me. Planting bee-friendly flowers is a great way to help the bee population. These are called asters, these are cone flowers, and this is blue hyssop. Won't that just attract more bees? Hopefully, yes. But just approach a bee like you would a dog you don't know. Don't get too close, don't try to touch it. Unless you are a flower, it should lose interest in you and fly away. And if more people like you give bees a chance, they might just, well, have a chance to make the world a sweeter place. Now, have I told you how much I love bears? I want to show you a number of pictures of bees and related insects that I have collected. First, here is a hive I found at a farm. Sometimes these little native bees hang out on the flowers. You've got a honeybee and a bumblebee on these onions. You can see how the bee will get its pollen stuck to it by going inside. This one is interesting because it is not a normal bee you would expect. It's all black. I can't remember what this was called, but I was super excited to find it. We always think of the bumblebees like this and the honeybees, but there are other bees like that fully black one that exist all over the place, and we just don't often notice them. Right, so here's another honeybee at my flowers. Some of my flowers, like this comfrey, attracts so many bees. The whole flower will be buzzing during the entire summer. And some bees are just for fun. Now this is interesting. This is a sweat fly. It's not actually a bee, but it protects itself by camouflaging to look like a bee. Right? And so if a predator sees that sweat fly, it might think, oh, that's a bee, I'm going to leave it alone. You can see the many different variety of flowers that the different bees will hang out at. Big old bumblebee on a sunflower. And finally, this was not a bee. This is actually, I believe, a European hornet, but it shares the same body shape. I just thought it was super cool and wanted to share with you what this guy looked like.
You know, hexagons are the bestigons. Why? Because bees. Bees are the best and build only the bestigon, the hexagon. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bees build hexagons because they're hexapods with hexagon eyes. How could they do otherwise? Excellent point. But the Humble Bumble has an engineering problem to solve. She makes two things, honey and wax, the former to eat and the latter to contain the former. To make but a little honey, she must visit a lot of flowers, and to make 1 unit of wax, she needs 8 units of honey. Wax is costly for bees in flower terms, and honey is drippy in food terms. So to make a hive that contains the maximum honey while using the minimum wax is royally vital. Thus, a honeycomb conjecture. Which shape works best? To answer, we need to talk tiles. Tiling is covering a surface with a pattern of polygons. There's lots of options because there's lots of polygons. Even the regulars go on and on-agon. Now for bees picking patterns, the more complicated ones obviously use more lines than necessary. That's what complicated means, and thus a honeycomb of that tile would use more wax per honey. So sticking to the simple regulars, there are just 3 that tile tightly: triangle, square, and hexagon. Pentagons are broken hexagons, leaving gaps, same with septagons. Octagons are alright, but they're no hexagon, which leaves the tiling trio which tile differently. A square is a square of squares, which is a square of squares, and so on. Squares tile tidily by basically cheating, covering an infinite plane with an infinite number of parallel lines. Like, wow, that's what a plane is. Boring. Triangles pull the same trick, dividing themselves down into infinite nothing. But not the hexagon, the only regular polygon to tile a plane without resorting to debasing self-division. Unlike some squares I could mention, at least triangle is trying to be more geometrically interesting than square, teaming up a bit to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, wait, hexagon! The other shapes can't help it, they just want to be the bestagon. Even some of the irregulars like rhombus tile by hexagoning. Same with your tracheus tiles and deltoid trihexanogals and your crystal rhombles and florid pentanogals. Look, they're all just hexagons. Even chirotiles, poor pentagons, tile up as best they can to form a lumpy hexagon. The rest just can't compete with the best. The hexagon, nobly indivisible, is the bestagon. Where were we? Oh, right, honeycomb conjecture. Max honey, min wax, 3 options. Okay, yes, there's the circle, a shape defined by the least perimeter for the most area, but that only works when you need just one. Pack circles, and this is the best they can do. Look at all that wasted space. And even if you pack the gaps, you still use more wax. And again, the way these circles arrange themselves, it's almost like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hidden hexagon. Bees use the hexagon because no shape is better to create the maximum area for the minimum wall, and this min-max stat of hexagon is one of the many reasons they show up everywhere, including in the aforementioned bee's eyes. Each hexagon is a long tube that leads to the light-catching cells at the bottom. More light equals better vision, and hexagons let the most light in using the least amount of wall. So why aren't your eyes hexagons? Au contraire, mon ami, they are le hexagon. Not on the outside, but on the inside. Your light-catching cells are at the back of your eye, in a hexagonal grid for the same reason as bees. Max light, min wall. Your window to the world is but through the hexagon. Does that not make it the bestagon? Okay.
Let's take a look at a time lapse of what it looks like as bees fill up a hive with their honeycombs. Every time it gets closer, they filled up one frame, and you will see they repeat that hexagon pattern and build their home. love to see how that complex forms and shapes can arise from those simple rules. Next, let's learn a little bit about how bees' eyesight, their vision, is a little bit different than ours because their eyes are a little bit different. They have eyes that are also hexagons.
Welcome to It's Okay to Be Smart. I'm Dr. Joe Hansen. For bees and flower blossoms, springtime is all about two things: feeding and fertilizing. See, the flowers want to pass their genes on to the next generation, and the bees need to eat so that they can do the same. So they use a little teamwork. But how do bees find flowers? And how do flowers find bees? What does a bee see when they see one of these? For millions of years, plants have evolved to depend on insects and other pollinators to carry their genes on to the next generation. And flowers are like a big neon sign. They used to say, "Land here." In return for getting a helping hand in making baby plants, most flowers offer up a tasty treat in the form of nectar. It's like a dinner date, only you eat afterwards. Biologists call this type of arrangement mutualism. The flower gets to spread its genes, and the worker bee gets a sugary drink and packs her knees with golden, protein-rich pollen to take back to the thousands of hungry mouths back at the hive. Everybody gets what they want. See, flowers sure look pretty to us, but bees see them in a completely different light. Literally. Not only do they see the world through these compound eyes made of thousands of individual pixels, they see a world bathed in ultraviolet, way beyond what our eyes can see. We see this, and they see this. See, special pigments absorb the UV light, and they paint this big bullseye in the center of the flower, guiding the bee to the tasty nectar, and of course that sweet, sweet pollination. Now, the relationship between flowers and bees goes way beyond the visual. Scientists from the University of Bristol recently discovered that bees can sense a flower's electric field. Just like when you run across a carpet in your socks, bees build up a positive charge as they buzz through the air, and flowers are slightly negative. This helps pollen jump from the flower onto the bee like electric Velcro. And it also helps the bee figure out if another worker has already visited that flower and slurped up all the sweet goodness. Now, nobody knows quite how the bees sense that electric charge, but their fuzzy little bodies might be buzzing like your hair when you rub a balloon across it. Now, evolution's been playing matchmaker between bees and flowers for millions of years, resulting in one of nature's closest relationships. So next time you see a bee buzzing around the garden on a warm spring afternoon, imagine how their world looks, and think about how much of nature remains invisible unless you see it through the right pair of eyes.
Thanks for watching. Leave us a comment and let us know if you have a question. Make sure to subscribe, and as always, stay curious and stop to smell the flowers.
So now let's take a look at how all of these different flowers look to different insects compared to how they look to us using their hexagonal eyes. This is what this flower looks like to us with our vision. This is what it looks like to a butterfly, who uses a slightly different way of seeing. And then bees, because of what they can see this. Okay, each of the flowers, though it's the same flower, looks a little bit different to us, to a butterfly, and to a bee.